So with that having been said, we will turn to Mark.
Magliari.
Magliari will give us an update on Amtrak developments relating to passenger rail in our area.
Thanks and good morning, everybody. I'm going to give you an overview about what's going on with Amtrak nationally and in Chicago. This portion is really an Amtrak national overview with a bit about the Midwest. Specific things like the second train on the Empire Builder route or other Midwestern specific service expansions, what we're doing with WisDOT and our other states. Mark drove here instead of taking the Empire Builder. I was able to drive with Rita this morning around parts of the Dells which you can't see from the Empire Builder when it comes through, and I was amazed at how sort of cartoony some of the Dells have become. And I was surprised. Normally, when I pass through here on the Empire Builder and look out the window and see the Torture Museum in downtown Dells, which has now moved, I've always wanted to see if there was a Dick Cheney statue at the Torture Museum, but now I'll have to look harder to find it. And I have what some might call bad taste in beer. So I have a tendency to drink products made by the G. Heilemann Brewing Company, which no longer exists other than its name, from La Crosse, Wisconsin. City Brewing has that facility. They were brewing beers under contract for Pabst and the folks who own all these old Heilemann brands. Could not find special export, even in cans, here this close to La Crosse, Wisconsin, which really tells you that my taste in beer is pretty much stuck somewhere around 1977. So I'm trying to, which is about the time I started drinking beer, as a matter of fact. So I'm trying to patronize Wisconsin businesses while we're here. Thanks to Mark for the clicker. It's a pivotal time at Amtrak. As you know, we have a new CEO, Wick Moorman, who was started on the job in September and more formally here in October. He's already made a trip to Chicago. He'll be making trips around the system. As of yesterday, for Amtrak employees internally, he's doing here what he did at the Norfolk Southern, which has an inbox called Ask Wick. So that opened yesterday, and we expect he'll be getting lots of questions, both from the advocacy community and from the internal employee base over time. But look where we are now, having gone through the second longest serving Amtrak president, Joe Boardman, a man I miss very much, and a truly, truly good man, despite what some crazies on the internet like to say. Ridership's at historic levels. Revenues are up and our debt has been cut. One of the things a railroad does when it doesn't have enough cash income, or what it does for tax reasons, is lease a lot of equipment. The P40 and P42 locomotives you'll see on our trains passing through Wisconsin, leased. Some of the rail cars we have, leased, because they were acquired in the early 90s and we needed cars and didn't have capital money. A lot of what was done was sign very high interest cost leases to start re-equipping the fleet, and we've cut a lot of that by defeasing a lot of those leases early. Congress passed the FAST Act last December. For the first time ever, rail transportation is included in what is a surface transportation bill. That was years and years and years of work to tell the folks on the highway side that the rest of the surface transportation network, that is rail, needs to be have a place in that bill, and it does. And it changed some of the rules about what's going on at Amtrak, updating from the Passenger Rail Investment and Improvement Act of 2008. So that law will cause some changes, and nearly all of them, I think you'll agree, are good. We have some big projects underway, and I'll show you some pictures of some of them, including the Gateway Initiative, and that says Gateway Program, plural, because there are two Gateway programs. One Gateway program is in New York. There are only 2 tunnels between New York and New Jersey, 2. And at peak times, there are trains passing through those tunnels every 90 seconds because our Amtrak trains and New Jersey Transit trains are sharing those 2 tunnels. And I was on a tour of one of them a year or so ago with the CBS News crew. They're amazing bits of engineering, and they weathered Superstorm Sandy about as well as you can expect, but they were fully inundated and had to be pumped out. And the long-term effect of filling these tunnels with electrical equipment with salt water is not good for these tunnels. And the fact there's only 2 of them, built upwards of 100 years ago, is insufficient infrastructure. So there's a broad agreement in the Northeast that you need more than 2 tunnels from New Jersey. There's 4, by the way, coming out the other side. And a lot of work's being done with us and New Jersey Transit and the governors of New York and New Jersey for that. But that is not the only gateway project that's important. There's a Chicago gateway project too. And a year ago, we released a study done by a Blue Ribbon panel that says, look, there's some low-hanging fruit here to fix some of the Chicago congestion problems, and there are some bigger things to do that take a lot of capital. The good news is, we and the railroads working together are doing a better job coordinating traffic in and out of Chicago now than we were a year ago. An actual, not joint dispatching. We called for a facility to be built with all of the railroad dispatchers in one big room, instead of them being in Omaha or Fort Worth or up in the Twin Cities. And although the railroads have not gone as far as we'd like, there's a better transportation coordination office operating now in Chicago. We have someone there every day working with them, because when the freights have problems moving freight through Chicago, you can bet we have trouble moving our Amtrak trains to and from Chicago too. So the gateway projects, both in New York, New Jersey, and in greater Chicago, including Indiana and Michigan, are important. Next month, we will celebrate the conclusion of the first phase of the Indiana Gateway Project, where between Porter, Indiana, and downtown Chicago, some of the most congested freight railroad outside the Northeast in the country, that work, that was the first phase of it, to add sidings, double-track bridges, and to try to loosen up some of the congestion there. We're going to celebrate this completion of that at an event next month, which is always a great month to do an outdoor event. I think November, December, always great in the Midwest for an outdoor event. So we've offered our station in Hammond, Whiting, Indiana for it. But in any case, there's lots, oh, the pointer's working. There's lots of good things going on at Amtrak, and we've made a lot of headway in the last few years. Everyone asks us to give a congressional funding update. I'm happy to do that. As usual, the Congress did not pass a complete budget by the time the budget year started on October 1st. That is not unusual. We're under a continuing resolution. They did fund us under the new structure, under the FAST Act, where the Northeast Corridor gets $235 million, and the national network gets $1.15 billion. Now, don't be thinking that that means I stayed at some expensive hotel here last night because we're just that rich. We're not. We have to go through an accounting process to talk about this, but instead of giving us what they've given us before, an appropriation for operations and an appropriation for capital, they're breaking it out this way, and that's going to cause a lot of internal changes, and it adds transparency for our state partners to know what it is we're doing. These are unaudited figures from the fiscal year just ended. Another record year for ridership and revenue nationally. We are at 31.2 million passengers, up about 1.3%. For ridership, we're about 2.19. By the way, these should be billions, not millions. This is what happens when you're talking on the phone while you're working on a presentation. So despite the fact that gasoline prices for part of this year were at $1.99 in parts of this country, and gasoline, I think I saw here, was like $2.30 a gallon, and driving is our primary competition nationally. Despite low gasoline prices and a pretty slow spring, we were still able to grow ridership and grow revenue and set another ridership record. There'll be a piece on the Wisconsin-based Trains magazine, Trains Newswire. I think if it's not up today, it'll be up Monday, Bob Johnston says, talking about this. For America's train, the empire builder, it continues to recover ridership. Why is it recovering ridership? Up about 3.7, almost 4%. Because on-time performance has improved. The single biggest determinant of customer satisfaction is, did the train get there on schedule? And underneath that is, if the train is not running to schedule, what kind of job did the crew do in updating the passengers as to why? The apple pie could be sweet, The dining car crew could be charming. The conductor could be as sweet as that apple pie. But if the train is way behind schedule and we're doing a crummy job explaining it to you, you will, when you do your scoring of that trip, give us a low score, and we deserve it. We have to do a good job. If we can't control the dispatching, and we can't, dispatching is done by CP and BNSF in this case, then we better do a good job of explaining it. And I think we've seen in our research the last couple of years, drilling down to on-time performance controls customer satisfaction, drilling underneath that to say how well we explain how the train is doing, especially since we can't control what the dispatchers do, is as important, and it's a customer-facing initiative we've been working on for the last year or two, and will continue to. So again, record ridership, record revenue, growth in both the Empire Builders ridership and the Hiawatha's. It was frustrating to Arun and all the rest of us when we reported last year 799,000. Oh, couldn't we get another 1,000 people on those Hiawatha's to have it break into 800,000? Well, we did, because we've been doing things, and Arun will talk about them, to build Hiawatha ridership, including some schedule changes. As you know, here in Wisconsin, we have 8 stations. I don't have the total Wisconsin station usage. When I worked on this earlier this week, I'll have it by Monday, of how many thousand people used our stations, 135,000. You know what our service structure is, the daily Empire Builder, back and forth, and of course all those Hiawatha's, 7 round trips Monday through Saturdays, 6 on Sundays. And we spend, at Amtrak, buying stuff to run the railroad in Wisconsin. We buy stuff in almost all of the 50 states, even those that don't have Amtrak service. And we spent $13.6 million buying stuff from Wisconsin. And I can pop open the laptop and try to give you some idea.